What if I were to tell you that I have compelling evidence establishing a specific limit on the maximum surface temperature allowable for a candle jar? Today, I'm going to give you 5 pieces of proof to back up that claim. Now, none of these reasons are 100% legally binding, except for the last one. Well, it'll come pretty close, but we'll talk about that one later. But stick around until the end, because when I'm done, I will run a super hot surface jar test using my hand to show you just how hot is. Woo! Man, that was hot. Let's go. Hi, my name is Jay Catalano. Part 1. In the candle making community, there is a range of maximum surface jar temperatures that float around. That range is anywhere from 125 degrees to 175 degrees. Luckily, I have not seen anyone debate that it can be hotter than 175 degrees, although I'm pretty sure that there are a few who believe it can. In addition, candle making gurus have varying opinions on this topic, and that can be very problematic for newbie candle makers, and here's why. When you have 2 candle makers who have different opinions on the maximum surface temperature of a candle jar making identical candles, final results will be different. Let's say these 2 candle makers were using the same candle jar, wax, wick size, series, fragrance oil, and fragrance load, but the one factor that each candle maker didn't agree on was maximum surface jar temperature.
I disagree.
Whether you know it or not, both candle makers would undoubtedly make changes to their candles to somewhat match that belief, even if that change wasn't directly due to surface jar temperature. What I mean is, if one person believes the max surface temperature of a jar can be as high as 175 degrees and another person believes it can be 150 degrees, both candle makers will look at their overall test results and candle output differently.
But I guess not everyone's on the same page.
The one who believes the temperature can be higher might look to wick up if he or she believes the melt pool isn't to their liking. Why? Because a hotter candle will develop a deeper melt pool. The melt pool change will ultimately enhance the hot throw and reshape the overall candle wax aesthetic as well. Is this a problem? Well, things are only problematic when someone gets hurt.
Ouch, that hurt.
And so that is why having a definitive surface jar temperature for all of us candle makers to abide by is crucial. Part 2. Now I'm first going to contradict myself and then chip away at that contradiction.
Alrighty then.
Technically speaking, there is no specific rule, law, or definitive document that states a maximum surface jar temperature of a candle. Let me explain. Some individuals believe that the maximum surface jar temperature is outlined within the ASTM standard F2417, which specifically pertains to the standard specification for fire safety for candles. But those individuals would be wrong, because the ASTM F2417 standard, or any ASTM candle safety standard, does not specify a maximum surface jar temperature. How do I know? I own a copy of the ASTM F2417. In fact, I own all the previous revised copies as well, and there is no mention of maximum surface jar temperature anywhere in the document. Once I realized there wasn't any mention of surface jar temperature, I reached out to them at the ASTM to find out why. Here's what they said. There are no surface temperature requirements in the F2417 or any other ASTM candle standard. In 2006, a surface temperature standard was developed, but it was not pursued. It may be that some test labs have added requirements that go beyond the standards, but they are not within the requirements of the ASTM candle standards. Best regards, Bob Nelson, Chair, ASTM Candle Subcommittee. Okay, so now we know that the ASTM standard doesn't have the answer, but some people believe the maximum surface jar temperature is what their favorite candle guru told them. But candle gurus, to my knowledge, are unlicensed and unaccredited. They are just human beings, like you and me, making educated guesses.
I'm a human being. Sometimes I get blemishes. I'm not perfect.
Now, don't get me wrong. They might be successful and damn well great at making candles, but their information is still non-definitive. Another technique I see some employ is the 5-second jar test. What is the 5-second jar test? The 5-second jar test is a technique which involves testing the maximum surface temperature of a candle jar by ensuring it can be safely held for at least 5 seconds. The problem with that technique is that everyone has different levels of pain tolerance, so what is hot to me might not be hot to you. Can everyone hold the same hot candle jar for 5 seconds? No, they can't. Quick story. When my son was just a couple of years old, I was teaching him the difference between hot and cold. I would turn on the faucet and use normal cold water to showcase cold and lukewarm water to showcase hot. When I would put my hand inside the lukewarm water, I would make a sound indicating it was hot, then retract my hand. Then I would tell my son to put his little hand in. Once he felt he could trust me, he would put his hand in. The second he would put his hand in, he would retract it and say, "Oh, that's hot, Daddy." And he would yell loudly in the process,
I don't know what we're yelling about!
Keep in mind that the temperature of the water was likely similar to that of pool water, which, if you've ever experienced, tends to feel cold initially. But in his little mind, the water was hot, extremely hot. While I'll admit that that is an extreme example because my son was young and probably following my lead, my point is we all have our interpretation of what hot is. So using the 5-second jar test technique isn't the answer either. But what is the answer? Part 3. Interestingly, there is sufficient hints, clues, or evidence as to what that temperature or temperatures should be. So with that said, before we delve into the proof behind these numbers, let me let you know what those temperatures are. For metal containers, the maximum surface jar temperature is 125 degrees. For glass, ceramic, and concrete, the maximum surface jar temperature is 140 degrees. But, and this is a big but, even though there is no definitive established maximum surface temperature as of the recording of this video, there is significant proof to back up that claim that those numbers that I just told you are actually correct. Now, before we dig into the proof, you might be wondering why there are 2 temperatures and not 1. In general, metals tend to have higher thermal conductivity compared to glass, which means they can distribute heat more efficiently. This can lead to metals heating up faster when exposed to a heat source. Additionally, metals often have lower specific heat capacities compared to glass, meaning they require less heat energy to raise their temperature by a certain amount. Let's get to the proof. Proof number 1, the Bureau Veritas, which is a global leader in testing, inspection, and certification services, strive to provide expertise in a wide range of industries to ensure quality, safety, and sustainability standards are met. Many years ago, they had a testing protocol for candles that stated that metal containers shouldn't exceed 125 degrees and glass and other materials should not exceed 140. Interestingly, they still have that test, but it is no longer visible to the public. The reason it's not visible anymore is not understood, but it's possible they have made changes to their documentation or they no longer want to offer it for free. Regardless, it is a significant document that supports the temperatures we discussed. Proof number 2, Nordstrom, who is a high-end department store chain known for its fashion, luxury goods, accessories, and home furnishings, had a testing document that stated the same thing as the Bureau Veritas. It states that surface temperatures of container jars should not exceed 125 degrees for metal and 140 for glass and other materials. Interestingly, they have cited the ASTM F2417 standard for their criteria. They even point to section 5.2 for the source. However, When you go to section 5.2 in the ASTM, there's no mention of surface jar temperature, which, if you remember, we went over earlier. This implies that Nordstrom made a mistake unless we assume that their choice of the term adopted, as seen here, suggests they determined these maximum temperatures according to what they deem suitable, influenced from their interpretation of the ASTM standard. Regardless, this is a second piece of proof that holds significant weight. Proof number 3, Martin Malahan, who is a fellow YouTuber and former ASTM standard developer, claims to have tested over 400,000 candles in his career. He states that the maximum surface jar temperature that they allowed for the big box stores was 140 degrees. Any candle that burned hotter than 140 degrees around the surface of the candle jar they were testing was an immediate fail.
You know, I look around this room and I see failure.
He did not mention which big box stores he was referring to, but if you remember, Nordstrom, which is a big box store, listed 140 as well. Just to be clear, he never mentioned anything about metal because metal was not tested in his YouTube video. I'll link his work in the description in case you want to see it for yourself. Proof number 4. According to the Consumer Product Safety Commission, if adults are exposed to water at 140 degrees Fahrenheit for as little as 6 seconds, they are at risk of suffering third-degree burns. 6 seconds is just enough time to realize that the object you've touched is too hot to handle. Woo! Man, that was hot. And most likely, you can put that object down safely. Additionally, it's crucial to note that by raising the temperature to 150 degrees, you can sustain third-degree burns in just 2 seconds. Now you might be thinking, well Jay, water is a different substance compared to glass. It's not fair to make a direct comparison between the two. And you'd be right. If I touch water that is 150 degrees, my hand will undoubtedly burn quicker than if I touched a candle jar that was 150 degrees. However, do you really want to take that chance? Or to put it more accurately, do you want your customer to take that chance? Remember, people have different tolerances to pain. Quick story. I was fortunate enough to watch both of my kids being born. I was a champion husband, father to be, and I helped out immensely during the long hours I had to put in. And I did it twice. By the way, my wife did good too, but the story's about me and not about her. Anyway, whatever the doctor told me to do, I did. And I cheered my wife on like a winning coach during the Super Bowl. I didn't flinch, I didn't get sick, and I did not faint.
Is it hot in here? I feel hot. Are you guys hot?
I was strong, super strong. I was manly. However, everyone has different levels of tolerance to pain. And after seeing what I saw, there is no amount of money, fame, or drug that you could give me in this world that would convince me to pull a watermelon out of my nostril.
I'd rather put out a campfire with my face.
In my opinion, women have much higher levels of tolerance to pain than men. Proof number 5. ASTM C1055, titled Standard Guide for Heated System Surface Conditions that Produce Contact Burn Injuries, provides guidelines for maintaining safe surface temperatures in heated systems to prevent contact burn injuries. While it's not directly related to candle safety, it addresses concerns about heated surfaces in various industrial, commercial, or residential settings. The recommendation to keep pipe surface temperatures at or below 140 degrees Fahrenheit is based on empirical data and considerations of human tolerance to heat. In my view, this recommendation stands out as one of the most persuasive factors available and could serve as criteria for legal judgments if a case were to go to trial. Now, those are the 5 levels of proof that I can go on, and as I said earlier, none of those are 100% legally binding. However, if one of your candles burns a customer of yours and causes injury or damage, the law will have to make a judgment based off of multiple forms of information that is established in the world today. For example, the law might utilize the information in the ASTM C1055 standard, which isn't a candle standard, but it does deal with surface temperatures. In addition, it might utilize the information from the Consumer Product Safety Commission. It might even use the information in the Bureau Veritas or Nordstrom document where they mistakenly credit the ASTM F2417. And so even if you aren't interested in being in a big box store, which I talked about earlier, the mistake on the Nordstrom document will not benefit you if your candle has a surface jar temperature greater than the temperatures given on the document. Who knows what the law is going to use to make their decision? That's why it's important to have a definitive number that we can all abide by to make candles with. One never knows when it comes to the law, and even though the ASTM standard is voluntary and not mandatory, anything that goes wrong with a candle that you make, the law will use those standards as though they were law. So we need to treat it as such. Now, regardless of all of that, does it make sense for any candle jar to have a surface temperature hotter than 140 degrees for glass, ceramic, or concrete, or 125 degrees for metal? What scientific, thoroughly researched argument could you give to justify a higher temperature? Would you want your mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, son, or daughter touching a hotter than normal candle jar that could potentially burn them? Do you know how hot 150 degrees is? Or worse, 175 degrees? Now I want you to ask yourself one question right now, especially if this video has not convinced you just yet. And be honest, do you have that kind of money to defend yourself in a court of law if a candle that you created burns someone from an overheated jar? The court system is brutal. Now I know what you're thinking. Oh, but Jay, that's what insurance is for.
The other girls agreed. I'm a genius.
Haha, listen, insurance companies can drop you from coverage at any time if they feel that you are a high-risk client. Engaging in activities that significantly increase the risk of claims may prompt an insurer to drop coverage, and insurance will only cover you up to the point that you set your coverage. All right, enough of all of that. Let's run a test and see how hot is. Okay, I'm going to run 4 surface jar tests using a glass jar. I will add hot water to that jar and get the temperature up to my first testing temperature of 140 degrees Fahrenheit. I will then measure that temperature and show you so you can see exactly what I'm doing. I will then try to pick up the hot water filled glass jar and hold it for as long as I possibly can. Then I will do the same thing for 150, 160, and finally 175 degrees Fahrenheit. I will run a timer that will begin immediately when I touch the jar and will stop immediately when I completely release my hand from the jar. So as long as skin is touching the jar, the timer will be ticking. I will not do any video editing once I show you that the temperature has reached the desired temperature to run the test. Let's go. All right, here we are at 140.9. Let's see how hot this jar is. Whew. Starting to get hot. Okay. Whoa. What was that? 10 seconds maybe? Oof. Man, don't try this at home. I'm serious. Don't try this. That's why I'm doing this video, so you don't have to do this. So you know how hot is. That's hot. All right, here we are at 150.9. I think I overstayed my welcome on this jar. All right, here we go. 160.8. Ooh! That was hot. That was hot. All right, here we go. 175.8. Woo! Man, that was hot. Not gonna lie. That was hot. I don't even know if I got 3 seconds in there. I don't even know if I got 2 seconds in there. All right, it's 140.9. Here we go. Woo! 140's hot, but I held it for about 10 seconds? I'm not sure how long I... Woo, man. Okay, 150.9. Ah! That hurt. I tried to hold it as long as I could. Like I started to feel the pain and I was like, oh, that hurt. All right, 160.8 as you can see on the thermometer there. Let's do it again. Woo! That's hot. Is that like, I mean, if you're picking this up and walking over from one side of the room to the other, it's hot. You're going to drop it. No doubt. All right, here we go. There it is, 175.8. Oh. That was hot. And that was the test. Let me know in the comment section what you thought. I'm not gonna lie, my hand hurts. But listen, if I change just one person's mind on the maximum surface temperature of a candle jar from doing this test, which could possibly save someone from potentially getting burned, even though my hand is pretty sore right now, I did my job. And take a look at these videos that are popping up now. They're gonna help you on your concrete, hydrostone, and candle making journey. Until next time, thanks for watching. Ciao.